On behalf of our Rector, Ed Bacon, I'm so happy to welcome you to the Rector's Forum this morning. Ed and Hope are playing and eating their way through Portland, so we're very happy that they got this chance to take a weekend away. If want to special welcome to those of you joining us by streaming, those of you who are in your jammies, or maybe those of you who've already gotten dressed, but are nonetheless comfortable at home and watching us. Welcome, we're glad you're with us. If you're new to All Saints, we would love for you to stop at the table up here in the corner and pick up a red welcome bag, which is full of information about the ministries and upcoming speakers and preachers and programs here at All Saints. Lots of goodies in there, so please take one home with you. Well, on the liturgical calendar at All Saints Church, on the second Sunday after the full moon, before the Oscar presentations, we always have our critic in residence, Ken Turan, join us in the forum. So. It's our annual gathering of people who like to sit in the dark and listen to stories, and that's one of the ways we define ourselves here at All Saints. So we're very happy. Ken, as you all know, is film critic for the Los Angeles Times and NPR's Morning Edition, and many of us start our Sunday mornings before coming to church by listening to him on NPR on Sundays. He's been a staff writer for the Washington Post and TV Guide and served as the Times book review editor. He's also the director of the Los Angeles Times book prizes that happen at the book fair in April at USC, which is such a wonderful event. His books include Free for All, Joe Papp, The Public and the Greatest Theater Story Ever Told, Never Coming to a Theater Near You, and now in theaters everywhere. And we're really thrilled that he has a new book coming out in June, not to be missed, 54 Favorites from a Lifetime of Film. And I know that all of us will be watching 54 films starting in June, which would be fantastic. So without any further ado, and please be thinking about your questions. This is really all about back and forth and questions, and I know Ken will want to hear them. Let's welcome Ken Turan.
Thank you. Wow. No, I mean, I'm always so happy to be here. I have some notes, and the first note I wrote down, I underlined it, is the word pleasure. It's just a pleasure to be here. As you know, if you've been here before, I will talk for a little bit, but mostly I want to answer questions. I want to know what's on your mind. And I find the questions here always stimulating, so I'm kind of getting ready inside, though you can't see it on the outside. I wanted to mention before, I wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of the Oscar races because two of them are quite interesting this year. But before I go there, I want to mention a film that's in theaters now that I reviewed on Friday, but in its wisdom, the LA Times buried the review on the inside, and I don't know how many people saw it. It's a Romanian film called Child's Pose. I don't know if anyone is familiar with Romanian cinema. These films are very human, but very intense. They're really too intense for the Academy. No Romanian film has ever been even nominated for the Best Foreign Language Oscar. They're very real, and I think they probably make some viewers uncomfortable because they're so real and so psychologically acute. The famous one that didn't get nominated was 4 Months, 3 Weeks, 2 Years, which won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, but didn't get an Oscar nomination. And this one, Child's Pose, which is about a mother and a son, is just as good. And I think it's just a spectacular film. And one of the reasons I'm mentioning it now, in addition to because I think people, if you care enough about film and about life to be a member of All Saints and to come here, you'll enjoy this film. But really, these films, if we want to have films in theaters, we have to spend money on them when they're there. It's just that simple. I mean, it's a business for the theater owners, and it's a business that's changing and things are at risk. And a lot of these small films without built-in audiences are not going to come here at some point in time if people don't spend money and go see them. So please, yes, in theory, I'd rather you saw it at home than not see it at all. But really, if you enjoy these films and like the theatrical experience, really try and go and see it while it's playing here in Los Angeles. I don't know how long it'll be here. It just opened, as I say, on Friday. So really try and see it. Again, it's good for the future of this kind of film, but also this is a really intense, really wonderful film that I think you really enjoy. There are two races I wanted to highlight, and obviously I will answer questions about others if you have them. But there are two races that I think are particularly interesting this year. One is the best documentary race. Again, sometimes there's obvious films that are going to win, and obvious films that should win that aren't going to win. But this year is a little bit different because all 5 films are good, but there are 3 that I really like. And it's not really clear to me which one of them is going to win. The most popular film, and in fact the highest grossing documentary of the year, the one that made the most money in theaters of any documentary in 2013, is 20 Feet from Stardom, which is a film I really love. It's about the stories and the music of backup singers, the rock and roll music backup singers. It's just a terrific film. It's been, as I said, very popular, but they're very moving stories that these women tell. It's not just a feel-good movie. It's actually got some substance to it. But it's by far the most popular and the most unpolitical of the films. And so for many people, this will be the favorite. This is the one that probably most people think is going to win. But the Academy gave the documentary the best documentary Oscar, rather, to Waiting for Sugar Man last year. And there's also some kind of feeling that maybe the Academy doesn't want to give it to music films 2 years in a row, that they want to have something more serious. Traditionally, the best documentary Oscar has gone to a serious political film. There are several serious political films, on offer this year, and 2 of them are quite exceptional, and both of them very, very good. And so, one of the questions in this category, I'm going to mention those in a second, but the overall question is, if there was only one serious film, maybe it would be 20 Feet from Stardom. But with all these other serious films, maybe the serious vote will be divided and 20 Feet from Stardom will win. So this is a really perplexing category. The 2 films, and again, I would really encourage you, again, these are not in theaters. Well, I don't think they're in theaters anymore, but they're definitely worth catching up to at home. One is The Square. This is a documentary on Tahrir Square. It's got a really interesting backstory. The woman who made it spent much time on the square. She is Egyptian and made a film, took it to Sundance. Not only did people like it at Sundance, it actually won one of the top documentary awards. And for most people, this would be the end of the story. But things kept happening in Egypt. And rather than consider this film finished, the filmmaker went back to the square, recorded a lot more footage, spent a lot more time there, recut it in a way that was so significantly different that the New York Film Festival accepted it as part of their competition. And festivals are very ego-driven. They never take films from other festivals. The New York Festival especially doesn't want to take films from another festival. But they felt that the second version of The Square, which is the one that's Oscar nominated, was so substantially different from the one that won at Sundance that they took it anyway. So this is really a remarkable study of what's going on in Egypt. The other film is it's a kind of documentary that you're familiar with. Someone's on the scene recording what's happening. The other documentary is very different. It's called An Act of Killing. It's a project. It's the culmination of a very long process that really took about 8 years. Even though for most of us, I shouldn't say for most of us, definitely for me, stuff that happened in Indonesia quite a while ago is kind of something we don't know that much about. There was a mass killing of people who were considered to be communists. This happened, 20, 30 years ago. And because the anti-communist government is still in control, by mass killing, people say close to 1 million people were killed. But the government that did it is still in control, so the people who perpetrated these acts are considered in Indonesia to be national heroes. They're very celebrated. And an American filmmaker went to Indonesia, wanted to make a film about what had happened, but he found that even decades afterward, the families of the victims were still too scared to talk. Nobody wanted to talk about it. And in fact, if you look at the credits on this film, there are a lot of things that it just says like X, people were even afraid to put their names on this film. What he did instead, since the victims wouldn't talk, he ended up becoming friendly with the perpetrators, again, who are kind of like national heroes in Indonesia, so it wasn't hard to find them and to talk to them. But he got this really intriguing idea. Many of these, especially this one man who's the center of the film, is a big fan of American movies. And he got the idea, he said to these people, I'm going to help you make a film about what you did. And he raised money, he went to foundations, and he gave these people money to make small films about what had happened. And I can't tell you how mind-bending it is to watch this film. It's really a phenomenal film. It's very different than a traditional documentary. I've really never seen anything like it, because you see the filmmaker talking to the perpetrators, but you also see these films that they made, which are quite extraordinary and not what you might expect. And the whole thing just is kind of disturbs your head. So between these three films, I'm not sure which one is going to win, but I think they're all very much worth seeing. The other one I want to just mention briefly, because I see time is fleeting and I don't want to be talking so much on my own. Best Picture is also up for grabs between three films. 12 Years a Slave. And each of these films, again, I want to mention this because I think each of these films has a different constituency. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. The Academy really likes to vote for films that they feel do good in the world. And 12 Years a Slave is a film that generally has done good in the world and will continue to. So I think for that reason, that film is the favorite. But there are other films that have other constituencies. American Hustle is the film that actors like. There's a lot of very showy roles in the film, and actors are the majority in the Academy, and what actors like matters a lot in what wins, so you can't count out American Hustle. And then there is Gravity, which is visually really astonishing. It has story problems, which I think are obvious. I wrote about them when they first came. It's a B picture. It's just the world's greatest B picture. But technically, again, I think we've gotten, as a kind of a backlash to the initial favorable reviews, everyone has been so kind of intent on talking about what its story problems are that we really tend to forget how amazing the visuals are. I had the chance during one of these awards things, I was introduced to Manuel Lubezki, who's a cinematographer, and the man really responsible for the visual wonders. And obviously I congratulated him. I said, it's really amazing work. And he said, this was a couple of months ago. He said, I just saw the film this past weekend. And he said, I looked at it and he said, I seen would come up and say, I don't know how I did that. How did I do that? And it's amazing, this kind of technical expertise and what this film does visually is really, really groundbreaking. And so I think that is also a possible winner. But I think if I were to guess, I would say 12 Years a Slave. Interestingly enough, the one thing that the 12 Years a Slave people are worried about is that the film is so kind of, not only is it hard to watch, people fear that it's going to be hard to watch. And there's a real fear that Academy members will not watch this film. We're not talking about going to theaters, but just they will not put it in the machine and watch it. And if enough people don't watch it, it's not going to win. So, but I hope it wins, and I'll cross my fingers. And I'll leave it there. So it's time for questions. I don't know. How does it work? Are people going around or?
We've got a couple mics right here.
Yeah. Oh, the mics.
We'll have Eddie over on this side.
Okay. Sure.
Last year, you identified the film Barbara as one of your favorite dark horses.
I still like it.
I do too. And what is your favorite this year?
Of which?
Dark horse.
Oh, in terms of an Oscar film? Yeah, I think An Act of Killing maybe would be the one that I just mentioned, because I think that's a remarkable film, an unusual film, and it doesn't sound like anything you want. A film about mass murder in Indonesia doesn't sound like something people are going to flock to. So I'm afraid, but it's a very unusual film, and I think that's the one for me.
Over on this side.
I understand that most of The Square was shot on iPhones. The fact that quality footage can be done so unobtrusively, do you think that changes the game in terms of making documentaries, so it's less talking heads and seeing the actual event?
Well, it's been a huge boon for, the whole, I like to echo Karl Marx and say that, the growing inexpensive nature of documentary footage means that the tools of production are now in the hands of the workers. it's really easier and cheaper to make a documentary. But again, just it has to be good. I mean, I don't know if it all shot on cell phones, but I mean, there's some footage that is not shot on cell phones. But it's a question of what they do with it. I applaud the idea that it's easier and cheaper. There's definitely nothing wrong with making films easier and cheaper to make. But just it's a question of what they do with it. Just making it easier. You know, this is true also. The inexpensive quality of digital stuff has made, even dramatic films easier to make. And the people at Sundance, I know when Jeff Gilmore was there, he's now moved on, but he even years ago, he tore his hair out at how many films he was seeing because a lot of them were bad. Just because you can make them inexpensively doesn't mean they're going to be worth seeing. And that's always the problem. You know, maybe, I mean, people made effective fly-on-the-wall films, back in the 60s. Human beings have a real capacity to forget a camera's there. If a camera's there long enough, even if it's big, people tend to forget about it. So I'm not sure that it's going to make that much of a difference.
I agree with you about 12 Years a Slave, but my wife and many other, I shouldn't discriminate, women I've talked to said, I couldn't possibly see that film. So it seems to me there's so many people afraid to see the film. I wonder if that might affect the outcome. I agree with you. It's the best film that I've seen this year.
That's a fear. But I mean, again, I think, in terms of, I don't know that fear, and frankly, I don't think that fear is justified. I mean, it is a very tough film to watch, but it's not like the world's toughest film. I just feel bad about the fear, and I think it might affect the outcome. But really, if anyone here hasn't seen it yet, don't be afraid, Watch it. Yeah. Over there.
I'd like to hear you talk about foreign language films. I was amazed by Broken Circle Breakdown, love the music. But last night I saw Omar, and I can't stop thinking about that. So could you talk about your favorites or what you think is good and what might win?
Yeah, hold on, I always forget sometimes what's in these categories. For me, frankly, I'm still mourning the fact that Child's Pose is in one of the top 5. I think Child's Pose is as good as any of these, and it would be my favorite. The favorite is The Great Beauty. That's one of the favorites, is The Great Beauty. It's in Italian. I'm curious, have people seen it? Yeah. Because one of the good things about the Oscar, we all kind of bemoan the Oscars, but one of the good things about the Oscars is that when a film is nominated, it stays in theaters a long time because, the studios make sure it stays because they want people the chance to see it on the big screen. The Great Beauty is a really wonderful film. I mean, it's beautifully directed. It's got Tony Servillo, who's just a great, great actor. I don't know if anyone saw Il Divo many years ago. If you like Great Beauty, rent Il Divo. Same director, same actor. It's a film about Italian politics, but it's quite well done. So I like Il Divo. I like Great Beauty. I think some people say that I hope Great Beauty wins of the nominated films, but people also talk about The Hunt, which is a Scandinavian film about kind of someone unjustly accused of child molesting, a very strong performance. I admired both Omar and Broken Circle Breakdown. I had problems with each of them that kept me from embracing them totally. You have a shocked look on your face, but yeah. It's interesting to see those films there. And actually, I'm trying to remember what the 5th film is. What have I left off? The Missing Picture, yes. The Missing Picture is a remarkable film. It's a Cambodian film. This is like the Indonesian filmmaker obsessed with genocide in his own country. And it's just, again, this is a film I didn't want to see because I said, how interesting is this going to be? The filmmaker has recreated episodes of his life using small hand-carved figures. It's really kind of, I said, how could this be interesting? But I was prevailed upon to watch it, and I thought it was really remarkable. It gets an enormous, maybe because of the distance between the figures and what he's saying, it gets a really deep psychological and emotional resonance going. So that's quite a good film. A pretty good collection this year, the 5 films.
Is it just my imagination or the role that Kate Blanchett played in Blue Jasmine was very much like Blanche Dubois from A Streetcar Named Desire. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I'll tell you something interesting. I mean, obviously it is. I have it on good authority that when the writers branch of the Academy, they have to decide what films what films go on the ballot and what films, one of the contentious things that the writers branch of the Academy has to decide is a film an original screenplay or an adapted screenplay. And the Writers Guild had a discussion about whether to make Blue Jasmine an adapted screenplay because it seems so clearly influenced by Streetcar Named Desire. I mean, it just is. And whether anyone, you can't see Streetcar and see this and not know that there's a connection. The Academy decided it was an original screenplay. I think I would have done the same thing, but the link is very, very strong. And I think Kate Blanchett did play Blanche on Broadway, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So, no, it's not your imagination.
Good morning. My comment has to do with what I kind of perceive as the excessive length of movies these days. 2 hours and 15 minutes, 2 hours 20, 2.5 hours. And, you go into a theater and you have to sit through 20 minutes now of previews. It's gone up from 15, it seems like. And you think, okay, here's a 2.5 hour movie, even if it's gotten good reviews, this better be good is kind of my reaction. And I don't know if it's just me, but 2 days ago I saw, ironically enough, Enough Said with James Gandolfini and Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Yeah.
And, that was in and out in 95 minutes, a well-made film, good acting, had something positive to say. And it just seems like these movies, even the better ones, are just way too long.
Well, they are long. And I think one reason you see more and more trailers coming attractions is that the theaters feel they have a captive audience. Not only do they have a captive audience, they have an audience of people who are going to spend money to go to the theater, which is not every American. So they really don't want to let you out of there without trying to get you to come back. I think, what happens with these long films is I really think, quite frankly, more times than not, you have kind of directorial ego involved. It's a mark of power in Hollywood that you can make your film long. No one likes these films. Theater owners hate them because it means fewer shows and they make less money. Audiences get restive, but directors, they think they have something important to say. And, if they have enough power, they make us sit there. Yeah.
Whenever I read your reviews, I try to imagine what your life is like. How would you describe a typical week? How many movies or shorts or documentaries are you watching? Do you have time for other pursuits?
I was just thinking about that this morning, actually. A job like this, again, it's hard to know how to describe this because it's kind of like it takes over your whole life. I don't have a lot of, time to do other things. I squeeze it in. I see 3 to 5 movies a week, more like 3 mostly, but sometimes 5. I watch, almost every night I'm doing something. Because traffic has gotten so bad, I spend a lot of time in my car trying to get to screenings. I often think more nights than not, I am eating takeout sushi in my car. Because I don't have time to do anything else, So it's a very exciting, but it's very time-consuming. You really have to like films to do this because I'm not rushing off always to see something wonderful, I used to work with, I don't know if any of you know the name Ruth Reichel, who is a restaurant critic. When she was restaurant critic at the LA Times, we had this conversation where, we both have jobs that people envy. And Ruth said, when people envy my job, they don't know about the nights when I have to drive 100 miles in a rainstorm to a terrible meal, And there's something of that, if the films were all great, this would be the best thing in the world, but they're not.
I wanted to ask about a film I haven't seen but saw good previews, and I think it's based on a true story and had terrific acting, The Butler. Could you comment on what your feeling was about it or why it was left out as a nomination?
Well, my gut reaction is that it was left out. My initial uncensored thought is that it was left out because it wasn't very good. And sometimes the Academy does that. Parts of the... I mean, I shouldn't be so glib about it not being very good. There were some parts of it I really liked. So that story is a great story. It was great to see it finally made into a fictional film, even though it's years later. And some of the acting is really, really good. I think some of the actors got left out just because this was a year that Tom Hanks and Robert Redford gave two of the best performances of their entire careers, and they weren't in there. So, people got left out from The Butler that should have been in there, but I think that was just a function of competition. I don't think it's a particularly well-made film, though I like the acting, and I really like that story was out there. It's a very dramatic story. I just wish that it was a better film.
A broader question, if you were on a desert island and you could only watch 5 movies, what would they be?
What would they be? Well, as was said, I've got a film coming out, with 54 of my favorite films. I'll mention 3 films that I know I would take with me. This book isn't ranked, but I mean, I'll pull these 3 out as probably my 3 favorites. One is a French film. 2 of them are French films, actually. One of them is Children of Paradise, which I'm just... Again, what you look for in a desert island film, and what I look for in these films, is films you can watch again and again and again, because you're not getting any more. This is it. So that's a film I can watch endlessly. There's another French film that's a little more obscure, but it's just so beautiful. Again, my top 2 films are romantic films. I really have a weakness for romantic films. The other one it's by a man named Max Ophuls. It's called The Earrings of Madame De. That D-E ... You never find out her last name. That's kind of one of the gimmicks. And it's just visual. Max Ophuls was known for his camera movements, never been equaled or exceeded by any director, by just kind of the fluidity and the beauty of the way he moves the camera. And there are some sequences in this film that just every time I see them, they knock me out. And I think for an American film, I might take The Godfather. I mean, The Godfather is a film that you could just, every time it comes on, or if you come across it, you say, well, I'll just watch a few minutes. And, it's X amount of hours later and you're still watching. And also for this book, I revisited a film I hadn't seen for a while, and I thought, well, maybe I'm just over this film, and it turns out I wasn't. I really love Casablanca, even though it's almost too standard to mention, but I'm always kind of impressed by the power and the grace of the Hollywood machine that put this film together. This was a film that had a very bumpy gestation period. I mean, it was a film that almost came together by happenstance, yet it's one of the films that people continue to love, including me. So I think that's 4. Right, now, I'll save the 5th one for something I haven't seen yet.
Right over here. Could you also address other little gems, other little gems this year that have gone unrecognized by the Academy besides the ones that you've already mentioned?
Oh my God. I should prepare. I feel like I saw someone who didn't do his homework. I'm now in the dean's office, and there's nowhere to hide. If you come up to me if you give me an email, I will come up with some. I just off the top of my head, I really should have prepared something like that, but I don't have other names for you. Fruitvale Station is a great one. Yes, I love Fruitvale Station. That was a film I saw. I saw that. It's an interesting experience. I get to see a lot of films before Sundance for a variety of reasons, so I can write an advanced story. And, these films just show up. You don't know anything about them. They're all by unknown filmmakers. And of all the films I saw this was before Sundance last year, Fruitvale Station was the one that really stood out for me. I said, boy, this is really a good film. And there was a lot of talk about it possibly getting an Oscar nomination. That didn't happen. But it's a remarkable debut film. It's a first film by a 26-year-old kid, I have to say, recently out of USC Film School, but just a remarkably poised in a short film, really thoughtful, really involving. So I would definitely, if you haven't seen that one, thank you for reminding me. That was really a good film.
Is this very good? I wanted to make a slight comment, and then it'll lead to the question. It's about the Best Song nomination business. And of course, there was a controversy this year. I want your opinion about this, but I want it in the context of this. Most years, I find the songs just absolute pablum. And the song that's leading now is the song from Frozen. I think it's a classic example of pablum. And I don't know the other song very well, the one that was too controversial that they threw out. But it sounded like it actually had a little bit more in it.
Yeah, the best song. I don't know. I don't involve myself deeply. I mean, there's some Oscars that seem to be kind of vestigial organs, carryovers from the way the movie business used to be. Like short, there was a time when every time you went to the movie, you saw a short film. And now the short film is still an Oscar, and it's valuable for young filmmakers to get training by making shorter films. But you can never see these short films unless you go to one of these programs. And the song, they used to do a lot of musicals, and I think the song had more meaning. And now I think some of these songs, you don't even remember that they were, obviously in Frozen you remember the song because there is a lot of music, the big musical. Closest thing to musicals we have now are animated films. This controversy, I mean, it's complicated, but it's really about influence, and it's about whether this, the person whose song was kicked out used undue influence to get himself recognized. And I don't want to go, I can talk to you if you want to come up afterwards. It's very technical what he did, but I tend to think that the Academy did the right thing in disallowing it. Though again, there's so much, on the other hand, everyone does so much advertising and promotion, it's almost hard to say, how do you draw a line somewhere and say, this is too much, this has crossed the line? But I think in his case, because of something very specific he did, I think it was justifiable to bump him. I'm not a music critic. Okay.
About a week ago, in the excuse the reference, the New York Times, there was an article on the business section related that I swear was the plot of The Wolf of Wall Street. And I'm really curious about whether or not Hollywood made that film on the basis of actual plots they were recognizing at the time it was being written and screened.
I think The Wolf of Wall Street, if I'm not mistaken, is based on a book. I think this is basically based on someone's memoir, someone's memory of what it was like being the Wolf of Wall Street. But obviously this stuff is still going on.
Here, Ken.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to say, first of all, I thought pablum was great. I ate it till I was 16 years old.
Point taken.
The movie Nebraska had some flaws and was slow and so on, but I loved it. Could you comment on that?
Oh, I was a big fan of Nebraska. I mean, again, I think if I had to vote for Best Actor, I would vote for Bruce Dern. I mean, I think it's a performance of a lifetime, really, and it's so different than so much of this stuff. And he has talked quite candidly about how he kind of fell into another style of acting, And actually, he said, one of the things he said that I thought was very poignant, he said at the beginning of shooting, Alexander Payne really basically said to him, don't show it to us, let us, he was talking to, he and the cinematographer came up to him and they said to him, Bruce, don't show it, let us find it. And I think kind of that's what happened. I think that's a very good way of pointing it out. I think that's a marvelous film. It's well acted, it's funny, it's eccentric, it's in black and white, which is a rarity. I'm a big fan of it. I'm glad it got the recognition it did. Like I say, I would vote for Bruce Dern. I'd probably vote for June Squibb as well, who plays his wife and who's very funny. And, we should all be working that well when we're in our 80s. Knock wood. Yeah.
I would just like to know, Matthew McConaughey and Christian Bale, they both went to kind of extremes with their characters that they played. Matthew McConaughey in Dallas Buyers Club and Christian Bale in American Hustle.
Yeah.
Who do you think should, win the best Oscar? If it was just them two, who would you say should just win?
Yeah, I mean, actors like going to extremes. I mean, I think that's something it took me a while to understand, that actors sometimes do extreme things because that's why they become actors is to take these kind of extreme positions. And also the Academy likes that kind of performance. I mean, I think that's one reason they were both nominated. Gosh, I don't know which one. I think I'd vote for Christian Bale, actually, if I had to choose those two, because I literally, initially, I did not recognize him when he came on. You know, I'd forgotten he was in the movie, and I was, oh my God, it's Christian Bale, you know. But Matthew McConaughey did a great job. He is the favorite because people like his story. Again, actors make up a preponderance of the Academy, and he's an actor who was kind of making fluff, who turned his career around, got serious, and is getting accolades. So I think it appeals to the trajectory of his career appeals to other actors, and I think that's a big part. I mean, it's a wonderful performance, nothing to take away from the performance, but I think the trajectory of his career is going to win him the Oscar.
Could you comment, sir, on a movie that seemed to come and go pretty fast early last year? Was it The Way Back?
Yeah. You know, I'm a hard sell on coming-of-age movies, on, you know, awkward teenagers trying to figure out life. I mean, it was hard enough being an awkward teenager. Again, if it's well done, I'm happy to see it. But again, the bar is high for me, and for me, that film, it was fine, but it didn't go over the bar. So, and it actually, for an independent film, it actually did well. It seemed to come and go, but it stayed around, and it did okay.
Do you have a prediction for Best Actress? I guess you answered the actor, but how about actress?
Well, again, everyone says, you know, again, these predictions are based on kind of just talking to people and listening. It doesn't mean what I think will win, and sometimes it doesn't actually happen. But everyone is saying that Cate Blanchett will win. That is the word on the street for what it's worth, you know.
Hi, I saw a film earlier in 2013, and I don't know if the Academy just has a short memory or what, but it was 42, kind of close to our hearts here in Pasadena because it's about Jackie Robinson, and I thought it was an excellent film. I don't know if it's Best Picture material or Best Actor material, but I thought definitely Harrison Ford was worth Best Supporting Actor. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, no, I'm born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. I remember when I was a kid, I watched Jackie Robinson play, and I literally one of the few days that really stands out in my childhood is the day the Dodgers finally won the World Series for the first time. I can literally remember that day. So obviously I was predisposed towards 42, and I enjoyed it for that reason. But I mean, it just wasn't strong enough. It's an Academy-type picture in theory, but it was a tough year, and it just wasn't strong enough to get people to remember it. Again, that's why so many films come out in the fall. Studios do believe that, whether truly or not, that Academy members have short memories, and that what's in front of them is what's going to, the bright object right there is going to get the vote. So something like that, unless it's really spectacular, it's going to get lost.
I just wonder if you could comment on the movie. Little movie that I thought was quite good, Short Term 12.
Oh, yeah. No, I was a big fan of Short Term 12. That's one for you to write down of small films that got lost. Again, this is the kind of film I just said I didn't really like. Which is why I like going to movies, because you're always proved wrong. This is a coming-of-age story, but it's set in a very specific milieu. It's in a home like a state foster home for teenagers that's kind of run by young people in their 20s, and it feels very realistic. The acting is quite good. The emotions are quite strong. It takes you to unexpected places. I mean, again, it got some notice in the end. This is not a film that is fated to have any kind of Oscar notice, but it got notice in the Spirit Awards. I think there's some Spirit nominations for it. It's quite a good little film, and definitely thank you for bringing it up.
Hi, I'm wondering if you saw the documentary Casting By and what you think about the idea of casting being a directorship, or if it should have more of a presence if it should have its own category.
Yeah, I'm glad, believe it or not, that film is literally sitting on the top of films that I need to watch. I'm a big fan of casting directors. I think their work is underappreciated. I try to mention them in reviews as much as possible. It's hard to tell. So they're one of I guess there are a lot of categories like that. It's hard to tell up to a point, it's hard to tell what they do because if with the big stars are probably not brought in by casting directors, so it's hard to know where to draw the line. But if you see a film that's well acted from top to bottom, you know that the casting director has been involved. And I think what they do, I would be happy to see them have an Oscar, their own Oscar category. They're the ones who bring. They don't decide who's in a film, but they do the initial winnowing and they bring choices of actors to the director. The director says, well, who might be good for this part? And the casting director brings in people that he or she thinks are good. And it's a really tough job. It's a lot of instinct. It's a lot of intuition. It's a lot of hard work and kind of going to little theaters and seeing small films and, keeping track of who's new and up and coming. So I think that's a facet of the film business that doesn't get enough attention. And I'm going to watch that film, I promise. But anyway, it's called Casting By. It's about Marion Dougherty, who is a legendary casting director. It's supposed to be quite a good film, and I really am going to watch it.
The movie Stories We Tell, one of the documentaries that was omitted, wanted to know your opinion. To me, that was one of the small gems of the year.
Oh, I know. I think I wrote a piece a little bit about it last week. Stories We Tell is a documentary by Sarah Polley. She's a wonderful Canadian actress and director. This is about her investigation into her own life story. And again, for me, it's maybe as good a documentary as any other documentary this year. Was left off the list of the 5 nominees. I feel, from what I've found out talking to people, there's some recreations in that film, very artfully done. But again, there are people in the documentary branch who are purists and who say if they're recreations, we don't want to have them. It's not a documentary. I think that's it's defensible, but I think it's short-sighted. I really feel bad Stories We Tell was not on the top 5. That's, again, something to write down to watch. A wonderful film. Yeah.
First of all, I'm a struggling Catholic. This is my first time at All Saints. I'm never going back. I'm here. I'm in. This is awesome. Thank you. I would like to ask you to weigh in on something. I've heard you say a few times about things going too far. And my issue is the amount of commercials at the movie theater. I'm not talking about coming attractions. We all love those. I'm talking about the Coke commercials and the Ford and the blah, blah, blah. At what point has it gone too far? What can we collectively do about it? And this being LA, should we sue?
I don't know who you'd sue.
The movie time should say when the movie starts, not they start advertising. I don't know. Could you weigh in on that one?
Well, interesting. In France, they do it a slightly different way. If you look I go to Paris, there's this magazine called Periscope that lists all the movies and when they start. And there's something called the séance. And the séance is when everything starts, and then the movie starts, a certain amount of time. There's a time for the séance and a time for the actual film. So if you don't want to see this stuff, you can figure out when to show up. And I think a system like that might work here. I mean, again, I would just complain to your local theater manager because they they have to balance 2 different sources of money. Your presence in the theater and the money they get from showing these commercials. And I don't like those commercials either. I like the coming attractions, but the Coke commercials I can live without. So I think the only thing to do, but theater owners are sensitive to that, and theater managers are sensitive. If you go to the manager of your theater and say, I'm thinking of not coming back here, if enough people do that, I think they'd cut back. But that's all we can do. Is that right? ArcLight doesn't show them? Good.
Yeah. Could you talk about Osage County?
August Osage County.
Osage.
I just didn't like that film. It just felt overdone to me. I wasn't convinced by it. I just felt it was a misfire. What I was supposed to feel, I did not feel. I just felt like I wanted to kind of leave the building. That's what I felt.
Okay, where's the mic over here?
Yeah.
I thought one of the best films of the year was Inside Llewyn Davis, and I was really disappointed that it wasn't included in the Best Picture category.
Well, no rowdiness. This is All Saints. We can't have rowdiness here. I like the film, but I think we have just had a demonstration as to why it didn't go any further. It wasn't to everyone's taste. The Coen brothers make their own. You know, I always have believed the Coen brothers make films for each other. You know. And they like these kinds of stories, and they don't care if we don't like them or like them, for that matter. So I think I enjoyed it, but everyone didn't. Yeah.
Okay, I think we need to stop now. I know we could go for hours, but do you have a few minutes to hang around?
Yeah, I'll be down here for a little bit.
Ken will be down here to talk with you.
Thank you.